นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Blessings, good evening to you all. We've reached the last day of our retreat, and it's also the last day of the year. It's good to be together at these times. Last day of the year, can get some good energy by coming to the monastery to practice the Dhamma, listen to the Dhamma, chant, meditate with fellow practitioners. People keeping the precepts, 5 precepts, or many of you are keeping the 8 precepts, which are not easy to keep. So that's already something you can be, you could say, proud of or happy about. You've been on retreat for almost a week, keeping the 8 precepts. Maybe you've practiced keeping precepts through the year, but at least for this last week of the year, you've kept the 8 precepts. So that's something you can be sure was good. So often our mind slips into thinking about our life negatively, as you'll be aware when you meditate. Lots of uncertainty, negativity, self-criticism, etc., etc., etc. So sometimes we have to sit down and also appreciate the good that we've done. So at the very least you've kept precepts the last week, put effort into practicing meditation, however difficult you found it. You lived in a very simple environment in the monastery. You learned to be independent of perhaps many comforts and material conveniences that you're used to relying on. You know that you can do without the internet, you can do without your own personal kind of fridge or food and all the things that you would normally be taking for granted. Say if you were staying at home, come and stay in the monastery for a period of time. You're learning to be with yourself and relying on the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha more than these external things. This is one of the benefits of renunciation, nekkhamma, letting go of all kinds of sensual desires and attachments, if only for a short period of time. You gain independence, freedom. If you've completed a retreat like this, then you know in the future, maybe one day you're in a place where there's no electricity or not much food, or you don't have a phone or a computer. And you can say, oh, well, that's all right, I've done that before. Or you're in a situation where you've got to just wait for something for an hour or two with no distractions. You can say, well, I've done that before. I know what it's like to just be with myself with nothing else to distract me for an hour or two, because you've done a meditation retreat in a quiet place, in the forest, camping, with very little extra luxuries or anything. So that's an immediate benefit that everyone can feel good about and see as an achievement. And at the end of the year and the end of the retreat, you've got to remind yourself what you've done. We've done many good things. Otherwise, we follow the flow of the mind, which is always trying to find what's wrong with life, what's wrong with ourselves, what's wrong with the world, even what's wrong with the retreat. Maybe you've had times when you're just complaining about this and complaining about that in your mind. That's what the untrained, unpracticed mind does. As Ajahn Chah said, it just flows downhill like water towards the worst kind of thinking, the most negative kind of thinking. But hopefully you've had some insight into that. You've seen that if you make an effort, you can change that. Making an effort means both keeping the precepts, bringing up mindfulness, and then reflecting or contemplating what's going on, and maybe telling or teaching yourself to let go of those negative thoughts, or not to take them so seriously. Lumpur Chah said, don't give them too much importance. If you can see a thought that's unpleasant, unhappy, making you feel unhappy, well, don't give it so much importance. It's just a thought. And you can see that now after a week of practice, how many thoughts have arisen, passed away in your mind. And they're really not that important. Of course, when they come up and we're not very mindful, every thought seems really important. That's why sometimes we're not very peaceful. We keep following, keep attaching to every thought. It's like those thoughts shout out to us, say, follow me, I'm important. Even if it's a completely meaningless thought or just a very useless thought or harmful thought. They seem so important when we're meditating. They trick us. We have to develop our mindfulness and understanding so we can let them go and put them in their place. And no, that's just a negative thought. Arises, passes away, it's impermanent. Sabbe sankhara anicca, as we just chanted. That's all it is. It's just a sankhara, a bit of mental proliferation. When you can see that, then your mind goes to a higher place, doesn't it? It's going slightly higher. And that's where peace and understanding comes from. You can look back at your own mental activity and say, oh, it's just a thought. Arose, passed away, even if it was a form of stress, suffering, or it's unpleasant. It's just another sabbe sankhara anicca. Feelings, same. Some pleasure, some pain. How many times have you experienced pain in your knees or your back over the last week? Many times. But where's it all gone now? All those painful feelings, they arose, they passed away. Even if right now you're experiencing a bit of discomfort in your body, lots of people wriggling around, legs hurt, maybe coughing, maybe feel too hot, too this, too that. But they're just what we call dukkha vedana, just feeling arising and ceasing. If you can develop enough mindfulness to see that, then there's no problem. I remember the very first few days I was in Thailand, in 1983, I was a layman, and in those days the monastery didn't have a car or any kind of driver, so Ajahn Kalyano, the abbot, had to go and visit another monastery about 10 kilometers away, because the abbot there was an old monk and he was dying. He wanted to go and give him some medicine and check on how he was doing. So I went along, because I carried some funds so he could get a truck. In those days you didn't get a car, you got a truck. And you sat in the back of a ute, go from what they call a songtao to songtao means two lines of benches in the open, in the sun, in the dust, or the rain if it was raining. And you sat in it and you pay a little bit of money and you go to wherever you're going. So we went and went into the main meditation hall like this in the monastery, and the old abbot was lying there on a mat, just on a simple mat, not even a mattress, just a mat, straw mat, with a little cushion. And he's obviously just lying there all day and all night because he's so weak and so sick. And we asked him, "How are you doing?" He said, "Oh yeah, it's really painful, a lot of dukkha vedana. But it's just dukkha vedana. It arises, it passes away." Because he's a monk who's been practicing that, doing the chanting, practicing the mindfulness, meditating, reflecting on that for years and years and years. So by the time he reached the last couple of days of his life, and after we visited him, he died about 2 days later, he could just say, "Oh, it's just dukkha vedana. That's all it is. It's just one kind of feeling." And we don't complain about sukha vedana, pleasant feeling. We all like that, we want more of that, we like it. But really they have equal value. Sukha vedana, dukkha vedana, they just arise and they pass away, depending on the situation, the conditions. So in this retreat, perhaps somebody should do some research on this and write a diary, how many times they felt dukkha vedana in a day on their retreat, and then for 7 days. It probably adds up to thousands of small moments of dukkha vedana. But if you're practicing mindfulness, it's like that, isn't it? You're just becoming mindful and aware of what's going on in your body and your mind. One thing you notice, that even if you do have recurring painful feelings, discomfort, it's arising and ceasing. It's not like continuous. In 1 minute you're thinking, next minute you're feeling the pain, another minute your mind has gone somewhere else. It's not like it's always there, even though you might think that. It's because we identify with this sense of self. We say we attach to it, cling to the vedana and say, "That's me, that's myself." But it's not, isn't it? It's not a self, it's just feeling that arises and ceases. You practice mindfulness, that becomes more and more apparent, more obvious to your mind. Or when you're in a mood, it's the same. So you're feeling sad or depressed or worried, anxious. You may well have those thoughts come up in your mind, but when you're practicing mindfulness and you look at them, you realize, well, they're just arising and ceasing. There's two. It's not like you're feeling anxious all day, all night, 24/7. It'll be there, and it may be stronger, it may be weaker, and then there'll be times when it fades away. The cynics will say, "Well, it's going to come back, I know it will." But that's not mindfulness, that's just a view. "Oh, I'm depressed," so you keep noticing negative thoughts. "I'm sad," you keep thinking about what makes you sad. But if you establish mindfulness, you don't do that. You just notice arising and ceasing. You also notice the gaps in between thoughts, in between feeling. And that gives you a new perspective, doesn't it? You look at things differently. You say, okay, yeah, there's some sadness or some anxiety or worry or some anger, but it's not there all the time because it's impermanent, it's anicca. Then you can notice the times when it's not there more. Maybe you even realize sometimes there's actually more moments when you're not angry, not anxious, not sad, not suffering, than when you're suffering. It's just you didn't realize it, because often when we're suffering, we make a big deal out of it. We say, oh, I'm suffering. We attach to the idea, I'm suffering, and so we notice every thought, every feeling that backs that opinion up. But all the other stuff that's going on, we don't notice. We don't give it so much importance. And yet it may actually be more of the time that we're not suffering. It's just we're not noticing it. So these are the kind of things you learn when you're practicing on retreat. And you're seeing the patterns of your mind, the sort of cycles of different thoughts, feelings coming and going, but you're gaining a new wisdom, a new understanding. This is helping you. And particularly you're learning how to let go of this dukkha, suffering, stress. Sometimes we let go simply by understanding it is impermanent, and that's enough. You just let it go. Sometimes you replace the thoughts or the feeling with something better. So if you're feeling negative about yourself, your meditation, your life, whatever, well, bring up something more positive, and we can do that. Which is why I said reflect on your successes, your achievements for this meditation retreat. You've kept precepts, you've lived in a tent, put effort into practicing mindfulness, you've chanted, heard the Dhamma, got up earlier than you would normally, done all kinds of things, good things. That's something you have to recognize. And when you do that, usually you feel good. You could do that with the whole of 2022, couldn't you? Reflecting back on the year, your year, what happened for you. You could bring up some of the good things that happened to you, the good things you did, the good you saw in other people, and immediately your mind brightens up, doesn't it? It feels better. Recollecting the good in yourself, the good in others, is a wholesome, we say it's a wholesome state of mind, kusala dhamma. And wholesome states of mind are accompanied by feeling of well-being. Your mind brightens, feels happier, feels better while you're doing that reflection. So it's something we should make the effort to do. Give some meaning to our life. Another very obvious reflection we have at this time of year is that we're all 1 year older, another new year, another end of the old year. 1 year older, so that means 1 year closer to the end. What do they say? Death is just sitting on your shoulder. It's very close, we don't know how long we've got. So that's another motivation to put effort into the practice. That's why it's good to do retreats. Maybe this is the last retreat you'll ever do. Who knows? Hopefully not. But you don't know, do you? Because you don't know what life holds in store for you. But you do know that you're a year older this year than last year. That's for sure. Your body has changed. You've probably got a few more grey hairs than last year, a few more wrinkles. Things have changed. Maybe people who were close to you over the last year have gone. Some people have died, won't they? Usually older members of family or friends, but not all. Maybe somebody a bit younger. That's something to reflect on. That some of the people you know have gone now, and they're not going to come back ever. You know? Things don't reverse like that. When you reflect like this, then it's a time to appreciate those who are still here. So when we come together on New Year's Eve, it's like saying, I'm still here. When you do the chanting, you're saying, yeah, I'm still here, I'm still chanting. Because you don't know if you'll be here next year. You don't know if you'll still be alive. You don't know if anyone else will be alive. What next year holds, we don't really know. Every time we get the news someone we know dies, that gives a sense of urgency. This word in Buddhism that it's quite hard to translate into English. We call it samvega. Sense of urgency that life is slowly slipping away. My chance to do good, practice, understand the Dhamma is slowly disappearing. So I should use my time well. Not just let it kind of slip away. From the Buddha right through to us here today, many people in the history of Buddhism have used these reflections to help give them motivation and put energy into their practice. And when you recognize the fact that you won't be here forever, life is uncertain, it makes you value the time that you have. Makes you value friendships, value teachers, value all kinds of things, opportunities to do good, the good fortune that you've achieved. That's why when we chant, we chant, may all beings not be parted from the good fortune that they have achieved. That's a recognition that we have all got a certain amount of good fortune in our life. Even when we're suffering, we probably still have a mixture of good fortune at the same time. We want other people to maintain, keep their good fortune. We want ourselves to as well. But we can only maintain good fortune up to a point, because eventually we'll get old, get sick and die. So while we have our chance, then we have to practice, take the chance. Practice forgiveness is another one that comes up, isn't it? When you get to the end of the year, we forgive everyone. Why carry grudges over into the new year? Letting go of ill will towards others is it's good mental health for us. It's recognizing that if you attach to your thoughts of ill will, you're suffering. We call it ill will. Your will is ill. Your mind is ill when you're angry. It's bad enough having a body that's ill, but letting your mind get ill as well by holding on to angry thoughts. It's real suffering. It's something we need to let go of by forgiving, accepting, moving on. So New Year is a good time to do that. Start afresh. What do they say? They say bury the hatchet. Been carrying the hatchet around this last year, it's time to bury it in the ground, get rid of it. Get rid of all weapons, evil thoughts, negative thoughts. Just let them go and start afresh. Especially when you practice mindfulness, meditation, you realize that there isn't this one solid entity or person anyway. We're a process, a mixture of feelings, thoughts, the body, sense consciousness. So when you're angry with someone, what are you actually angry with? Are you angry with their thoughts that arise and pass away, their feelings that arise and pass away? Are you angry with their physical body? So are you angry with their hair? Are you angry with their skin? Are you angry with their bones? The more you reflect on your own body and mind and see them as impermanent, not self, then you realize anger is just a pure delusion, isn't it? You're holding on to negativity towards something that doesn't exist. There is no person there anyway. We're kind of, in a way you could say, we're lazy when we're angry because we're not analysing, looking very closely. So we just say, oh, that person or that group of people, that thing, I'm angry with it. But there's nothing there. The Buddha said, keep looking, separating out body, feelings, thoughts, and what you get is emptiness. The sense of self starts to dissolve, disappear. So then what's there to get angry with? If you have the desire to punish someone, because you're angry, you want to punish. What is it that you want to punish? Do you want to punish their skin, their bones, their hair? Do you want them to feel lots of dukkha vedana? The dukkha vedana that will arise and cease, just like our dukkha vedana. The more you practice reflecting on your own body and mind and see the impermanent nature of it, then kind of anger becomes pointless. And you understand why it happens. Because we attach to our sense of self, well then if somebody annoys us, hurts us, or something happens against us, then of course we get angry. But holding on to anger doesn't make much sense when you look at it. It's like trying to grab clouds and hold on to them, and they're just going to keep dissolving. Thoughts are like that, aren't they? Moods, emotions. They arise, they pass away. There's no one there. And then everyone says, well, who's watching? Who knows that? You don't have to ask the question. It's just enough to know that thoughts and feelings and emotions arise and pass away. You can keep looking for somebody who's the one who knows. We use the term, don't we? We say, meditate on the breath, bring up mindfulness on the breath, and be with the one who knows. But it's kind of asking for trouble, because then you go, well, who is the one who knows? It's just the mind that's been trained in the Dhamma, in the practice of mindfulness, in insight. So who has the insight? Well, nobody has the insight. It's just a skillful means to free the mind from delusion, and the sense of self, the attachment to the sense of self. And the reason you feel peaceful as you develop this practice is because your sense of self starts to fade, so then you feel light, easy. When you have strong attachment, you tend to have more strong feelings of dukkha. So everything feels heavy, painful, unpleasant. In dukkha, when we experience dukkha and we have no mindfulness, no insight at that moment, then of course the sense of self it's at its strongest. But when you can see dukkha as dukkha, meaning you have enough mindfulness to see, oh, it's just a feeling, it's just a thought, then it doesn't have that heavy feeling anymore. The sense of self starts to fade. It's just a feeling arising, passing away. So when you cultivate this path, Eightfold Path, the result is what we call jnana dasana. Jnana means knowledge, dasana means vision. True knowledge and vision of the way things are. So you're training the mind to see, look back at itself, look back at the body, look back at thoughts, feelings, consciousness, and see, well, these things they're there, but they're just arising, passing away, and there's no self in them. So true knowledge and vision, whenever you have it, is a liberating force. It releases you from some of your delusion of self. When we get caught into dukkha and suffering, it's the opposite. What did Ajahn Chah say? He says it's like when you have a screw, you're screwing something into a piece of metal, a piece of wood. You turn it one way and it goes into the piece of wood. It gets tighter until it's completely tight. You can't move it at all. That's like the way of dukkha. You're just attaching and attaching, turning, and it's just the sense of self and the pain and the suffering gets worse and worse until it's just fixed. We call it a fixed view of self, where you identify with whatever the problem is that you've created in your mind. And the practice of the Eightfold Path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, is like doing the opposite. Now you're unbinding or loosening that screw. So it's like if you use a screwdriver, now you're turning the other way. The screw is loosening until it can come out. The sense of self is removed from the experience. So that's what we need to do. We need to loosen up a bit. And we even use the phrase, don't we? Say, oh, loosen up. Maybe your friend is getting all uptight, stressed about something. You say, oh, loosen up, loosen up. That's what we're doing, whether it's in our meditation or just thinking about whatever it is that we're suffering in our day, in our life. We need to unwind, loosen up, unbind whatever it is that we're tightening and getting more and more fixed and stuck to. When you can see dukkha as merely dukkha, it's an experience, a painful experience, but it's just dukkha, then your mind can let go. When we can't do that, then the mind goes to craving and attachment. We hold on to the dukkha and we create more dukkha out of dukkha. So we get dukkha and then dukkha and then dukkha. We all know that. Thinking about something, holding on, reacting, remembering, making it worse and worse maybe. And the mind feels heavier, burdened. And then we tend to do things that make things worse. Self-destructive sort of cycle. When you introduce the Dhamma, it does the opposite, doesn't it? Say you're unhappy, but you keep the Sila, already that releases you from a lot of dukkha. You may be full of all kinds of worries and anxiety that will make you, tempting you to get upset and say something hurtful to somebody else or do something unskillful. But you keep precepts. It's already the first step of the practice where you're restraining your dukkha and not letting it lead to hurt yourself or somebody else. And if you practice mindfulness, you can do it even more effectively. You can see, that intention to say something, do something harmful, I can just see it as a thought arising, passing away, let it go. And this is the beauty of the Dhamma, or the amazing thing of the Dhamma. If you train your mind, you can see where you're creating suffering, dukkha in your experience, and you can let go. And you can change that experience to one of stress, unhappiness, bring the mind back to a place, we say, back to a place of normality. It doesn't mean to say you remove all painful experiences from your life, but you no longer react with dukkha or stress. You're no longer attached to them. Going back to that old monk who died the first few days I was in Thailand, we asked him about his symptoms, and he said, he had terrible pain in his stomach, he couldn't eat. So we're sort of trying to give him some support, words of encouragement, and he said, it's just the way it is. It's just like that. That's what this disease does to the body. It does this to the body. And he had a kind of perfect way of expressing insight. He wasn't creating any additional extra suffering with his illness. He's just saying, that's what illness does to you. Nothing more you can say. There's nothing more you can do. You just have to be patient with it. He took some medication. We gave him some painkillers. But there wasn't really anything could be done, and everyone knew that. Just trying to be friendly to him. But he had the right attitude. He said, it's just the way it is. That's what illness does to you. It makes you feel pain, it churns your stomach. That's what he was talking about, I seem to remember. And that's what dukkha does. Dukkha is like that. Somebody is unkind to you, that's what it's like, isn't it? When they're unkind to you, they say those words, that's what it's like. There's nothing more you can really add to it, is it? Or you're sitting meditation here and your legs hurt, that's what it's like. Having a human body and legs hurt, that's what it's like. Just know it as dukkha, but you don't have to create any more stress out of it. As we chant every morning. Association with the disliked is dukkha, separation from the liked is dukkha, not getting what you want is dukkha. So it's funny, isn't it? Ajahn Chah used to laugh. He said, when we give the New Year's blessing, we're wishing everyone to be happy, successful, have long life, be healthy, wealthy, good looking. But do they get it? Do they actually get those things? We wish them when we give a blessing, that's what we wish. But it's difficult to get all of that in life because you're kind of getting older every day and things change on you all the time. Nevertheless, that's how we will wish you this New Year's Eve. We will wish you good health, happiness, success. But we'll also wish you lots of mindfulness and insight to deal with the failures and the painful things and the disappointments of life as well, so they don't overwhelm you. Anyway, maybe that's enough Dhamma teaching for now. And we have a night of practice, New Year's Eve, still early, still got a few hours to go. So I'll leave the talk there, and we still have the rest of the evening's program.